Good morning. It is 9:45 a.m. and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance Auditing Committee on Thursday, May the 21st. Before we begin, please note this meeting is being recorded. Welcome to everyone joining us here in person and those listening on the telephone. If you would like to provide public comment at today's meeting, and if you have not done so already, please let Thomas in the back of the room know, or Justine on the call line know what items you'd like to speak on today. Madam Secretary, kindly call the roll.
Thank you, and good morning again, everyone. Starting with Director Cochran.
Here.
Devlin is absent. Hernandez. Here. Maston is absent. Berdoni.
Here.
Vice Chair Parr is absent. Chair Giudice.
Here.
And President Rabbit.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum. You're not a committee of the whole. Also in the room, Director Snyder walked out, so he's not here. Garbarino and Hardiman.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Please follow along by referring to the page numbers located in the bottom right-hand corner of your meeting packet. We will begin with agenda item number 3, which is ratification of previous actions by the Auditor Controller. And we'll welcome the Auditor Controller here today with us to go over the investment report, which begins on page 9. Welcome, Jennifer.
Good morning. Chair Giudice and members of the Finance Committee. I am a poor substitute for Monique, who usually comes up here and gives you all good market or bad market news. She's unable to be here today, it looks like, so I'm standing in. The report's here before you. I'm not going to go through it because this is PFM's specialty. As you know, market's been volatile, but one of the things I did want to say is that we have made our third big payment on the seismic retrofit, which we were trying to do some cash flow to make sure we had that. So now that we have got that reimbursement, that will go back in. So that will hopefully be back in the investment pool soon. So if you have any questions, happy to answer them. And if you had something for Monique, happy to pass that on and get an answer for you.
Thank you for that abbreviated report for my first meeting. Would any of the directors like to ask questions? Seeing none, do we have any questions online? Any callers?
We have no public comment for this item.
Okay, that concludes discussion item number 3. Before we take our vote, we went through that. Sorry. May I have a motion on agenda item number 3?
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you. Voting on item number 3, starting with Director Cochran.
Yes.
Devlin is absent. Hernandez. Aye. Maston is absent. Berdoni.
Aye.
Vice Chair Parr is absent. Chair Giudice.
Yes.
And President Rabbit.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes.
Thank you. We have nothing on items 4 or 5, so we'll continue to item 6, which is the annual review of the district's 457B deferred compensation and 401A defined contribution programs. The staff report begins on page 39, and we're going to welcome Gabe Martinez here to present the report. Welcome.
Welcome, Chair. Thanks, Chair Giudice. Brant Martinez. Going to present this item for you. So this is our annual review of our defined contribution 401A and 457 deferred comp. We meet quarterly. So our plan is administered by Mission Square, and we also have a consultant that does an independent review. It's Waltspire, formerly NFP. So we meet with them. We meet with Mission Square throughout the year quarterly to go over education for employees and make sure that they're that to try and like drum up interest and participation in the plans. And so the district staff met with both parties in March and went over the detailed review with them, and that covered the calendar year 2025. So Mission Square also comes on site throughout the year monthly and visits both San Rafael and Bridge sites to meet with staff, and has to allow them to come in and have one-on-one meetings to make any changes to their plans or any adjustments. And so throughout the course of 2025, Mission Square held 176 one-on-one meetings with district staff. And so throughout the course of the year as well, there were participation contributions increased about 2% for the deferred comp plan, 6% for the 401A, and 12% of roll-ins, external roll-ins to the plan. So as part of this review also, the IPS is reviewed annually. And so right now there's no recommended changes, and all of our investments are currently in line with the IPS. So both plans offer the same pool of investments. So it's one review that they do that covers both lineups and both plans. So some key takeaways from some metrics for the past year. In the 457, there was a 12% increase in total assets despite a active plan participant decline. It was a couple people less. So that just shows that we had pretty good performance this last year. And the 401A, there was a 21% increase in total assets year over year. And that there was also a increase in plan participants as well. So the 401A plan being set up for staff that hit the CalPERS limit in a year, and then they continue on to having contributions at the same 7.75% for PEPRA to that plan. And so part of this annual review that's most of what Mission Square is doing in administering the plan, but we have the WealthSpire come in at the end of the year to do the independent review of all the lineup offerings that Mission Square has in the lineup. And so part of their evaluation plan is a detailed scoring matrix that they have, which ranges from 7 to 10 being a good score. For under 6, 5 to 6 is a watch, 4 to 6 is a watch list, and then anything less than that is going to be recommended for removal. This year, there was only 2 funds that were placed on the watch list. One of them was about a 6 score. They're not recommending it to remove. About 2 years ago, they switched advisors to the plan. The fund changed strategies, and so WealthSpire was confident that they would turn it around, but it's still going to remain on the watch list for the coming year to make sure that actually does happen. So they will come back next year to see if they're going to recommend any changes if the performance doesn't turn around. And the other fund that was placed on the watch list is too new and doesn't have enough historical data to score. So it's on the watch list. It's scored right now at a 10, but it's on the watch list just for being new. So, and then lastly, the district doesn't pay any direct fees to Mission Square. The fees for these investments are paid by the plan participants. And the fees from the last calendar year are about comparable to what they were in 2024. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there questions or comments from the directors? Okay, seeing none. This concludes the item discussion on item number 6, and no action is required for the item. Is there anyone from the public, however, wishing to speak on this item?
We have no speakers for item number 6.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Grant. We'll proceed. We'll continue to the main attraction, item number 7, which is the initial presentation of the proposed fiscal year 26-27 operating and capital budget. Staff report begins on page 51, and the proposed budget book was provided separate from the packet and is available online. Jennifer Minucci is here to present this report. Jennifer, please begin your report.
All right, good morning again, Chair Giudice and members of the Finance Committee. We were just joking that downstairs we call this the playoffs of the Finance Committee. Next month will be the Super Bowl. Get this passed out, but this is where we like to spend some time, and as my kids say, time to lock in. So I hope if you have your electronic version budget, if not, it's on the website, but if you also have your hard copy, I'm going to be referring to the actual book itself. So if anybody needs an extra one, I'm sure the district secretary's office certainly should be in front of you. So I am here today to present the proposed budget for fiscal year starting July 1, 2026 through June 30th, 2027. As most of you know, I've been producing this budget for the past 25 years. This is the second time I'm presenting it to you as your auditor controller. As we've done traditionally, you have a board item in front of you that has a set of recommendations that are part of the annual budget process and a summary of highlights in the budget. Today, I'm going to present the proposed budget and walk through the details, and then before coming back to the board next month to approve the budget and the associated recommendations. All right, so I'd like to start off with the page after the cover that doesn't have an actual number, and really want to acknowledge that it takes a village every year to get and create this. In particular, I'd like to thank the Budget Office with Grant Martinez, the Director of Budget and Financial Analysis, who has led the process this year. Jacob Brown, who I believe is listening online, but we have him working diligently on other items today, who is the Principal Capital and Grants Analyst, and he's led the capital portion of the budget this year that we'll talk about. And both of them have met with every director and every member of the executive team to ensure that all the significant pieces are complete in both the operating and budget, capital budget. In addition, I got Chris Rogers. You want to stand up, Chris? Our finance administrative analyst. We call her our glue. Make sure we stay on task, ensures that we're tracking down outstanding information, runs logistics, make sure that we don't say anything in the budget that we didn't mean to, do all the good things. We also had in here Gandari Galindo, who is a consultant who assists us in our budget analyst role this year. And lastly, none of this would be possible without the help of the executive team and all the mid-management staff. So thank you all for all your work on getting this document together. And then one last special, as Cody would say, shout out to Paulo, who I asked to really read and wordsmith, just make sure we had consistency. There's a lot of words in this budget book. So making sure that messaging and the script today is all intact. So with that, let's start a review. So on page 2, we always want to acknowledge the district receipt of the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from GFOA. This is the district's 20th year. So 2 decades we've been recognized for a budget that meets the standard of GFOA. And then next are the table of contents. So on 4 and 5, if you have the electronic version or you're downloading it online, you're able to click on the page numbers and go straight to that section. That's been very helpful for those that are trying to navigate the book. And then let's start on page 9, which is the general manager message. So turn to page 9 on the general manager's message. This is the welcome and state of the district update that summarizes the significant issues and accomplishments of the district this year. If you haven't had a chance to read the budget and you only read one thing, I ask that you read the GM message. It's a good place to get a quick summary of where the district stands today on funding and the priority on our projects. In summary, this message acknowledges that the district is the one-stop shop for transportation in the city from the North Bay, whether you cross our bridge, ride our buses, or ride our ferries. It acknowledges that the district primarily funded with tolls and fares. As a reminder, we're a fee-based agency that does not receive any dedicated state or local tax revenues. The general manager's message notes that the bridge traffic is still about 25 to 30% below pre-pandemic levels, which translates to less toll revenues available for our transit services. It also outlines how we've reduced expenses. For example, today we provide 20% less commute bus service and employ 40% fewer bus operators through attrition than we did in the start of the pandemic. To meet customer demand, the district has slowly added back bus and ferry services needed. With less bridge toll revenue for transit, the district has been spending down one-time SB 125 funds to assist in subsidizing our transit operations. These one-time funds we've been able to stretch over a few years, but we expect that funding to be spent at the fall of this year. Without the return of commute traffic and associated tolls, the district will face a deficit this upcoming fiscal year. This means the district will spend down some reserves that have been set aside for capital projects while we wait for downtown San Francisco to return. We've seen a modest increase in bridge traffic year over year, but if we do not see the recovery back up to its pre-pandemic levels, the district will need to revisit current service levels in transit. Some of the priority projects outlined in the GM message include the seismic retrofit of the suspension bridge, the $1 billion project funded through $400 million in BIP funds and $200 million FHWA funds from Caltrans Local Highway Bridge Program. The district worked tirelessly to award that project late last year, and the notice to proceed was on January 5th of this year. This is a huge push by the whole district and its partners to make this happen, so we will be prioritizing the project to ensure we spend the funds in a timely manner. In addition, the district has worked over the past few years with the North Bay transit operators to align service in an effort called Mascots. Mascots was implemented on April 12th, which was a huge undertaking from 9 agencies to make the North Bay transit better to serve our customers and to streamline operations. As Mascots is being rolled out with new travel patterns, the district is embarking on modernizing its ferry fleet and has begun work on its first ferry vessel replacement called the MV Liwa. The MV Liwa is utilizing 93% in grant funds and to design and purchase this first vessel. Lastly, the San Rafael Transit Center relocation project was awarded a $25.6 million discretionary grant from FTA earlier this year. The project was one of 34 projects awarded in this cycle. The SRTC, as we call it, is one of the region's busiest transit hubs with 9,000 daily trips, and the district looks forward to moving this project forward in the fiscal year ahead. We also want to recognize the district's commitment to saving lives. In 2025, the Golden Gate Bridge suicide barrier reduced suicides by 87% compared to an average year before the net was secure, with attempts also declining. And as always, we acknowledge we cannot do anything without our partner agencies, bridge users, bus and ferry riders, and our employees. We want to thank our customers for their continued support. All right, the book is organized by sections. I will walk through the first two sections, which are the financial overview, and then the operating and capital budget sections. I won't go into detail in division sections, which I would suggest when you have time to take a look at, as each division profile is laid out along with the status of each division. So the next section we're going to turn out is on page 19 in the financial overview. Starting on page 19 of the book, we summarize the district's overall revenue and expenses. For fiscal year 26-27, we're proposing a $540.1 million budget. This is made up of $299.5 million in operating expenses and $240.6 million in capital for the capital budget. The proposed operating budget will be funded through $252.4 million in operating reserves, $12.7 million in what's estimated left in the SB 125 carryover. That's estimated, of course, when we end of the year, and $34.4 in district reserves. The capital budget of $240.6 million will be funded with $167.8 million in government grants and $72.8 million in district reserves that have been already earmarked for these capital projects. We'll go into a little more depth on these specifics, but I want to turn to the next section on page 20, which is the capital budget. Just a note, last year we revamped the 10-year capital plan, which projects long-term needs for the district. This year we spent time reprioritizing and ensuring the highest priority projects are balanced with the staff resources and show a realistic spend down over the years. Projects that are spending staff resources are also included on the project list, and by approving the capital plan, the board gives authority for staff to move these projects forward into current budget year as resources allow. Given the priority and cash flow for seismic and ferry vessels, the number of projects this year is much shorter than years past. You can find the proposed capital plan in Appendix E in the back of the proposed book. I'll go into the capital budget proposed for the upcoming fiscal year in the next section, but this as an overview for our 10-year capital plan. Wanted to note that. On page 21, there's a helpful graphic that I always use that shows the district sources of versus transit. As you can see, transit expenses, both combined operating and capital, continue to be about half of what's being spent overall, while tolls for the bridge provide 1/3 of the revenue to fund the budget. So on page 22, the book has a 3-year comparison of the district's budget, both operating and capital, that include the FY 24-25 actuals, this year's estimated actuals that we think we're going to end, and next year's budget. Traditionally, half of our bridge tolls go to support our transit services. Since the pandemic, bridge traffic has not returned to pre-COVID. Therefore, there's less toll revenue that would generally go to subsidize transit. We are grateful to receive the one-time funding that we have to bridge the gap, and we expect, as you know, with SB 125 to fully expend those last-time funds in the middle of FY 26-27. But we will continue to seek additional funding. But what's important on this table is that it shows that at the end of the year, we will actually need $107 million from reserves from both operating and capital. On the capital side, it's anticipated we'll need 73 of the $107 million in district reserves for the $240 million capital budget. This is what we've expected and we've saved over the years for that. We've gone from a $44 million capital expense in 23-24 to 147 capital expense in 25, and we expect a 240 million with the commencement of the seismic retrofit in 26-27. For the operating side, we're proposing about 300 million in operating expenses. This proposed budget, adjusted for mascots, allows for slight more funding in transit as customer demand returns, as well as cost of living increase, except for ATU bus operators, where the COLA is finishing year until upcoming negotiations are complete. And all budgeted positions are funded, including those that are currently vacant, aside from the vacancies that we'll be talking about in the next section. The proposed budget needs 34.4 million to make up the operating shortfall. This past fiscal year, we continue to spend less than budget as we were diligent to manage the level of transit service to the customer demand, as well as the administrative costs. Staff will continue to look for ways to reduce expenses and increase efficiencies. At the bottom, page 22, we talk about the health of the reserves. Traditionally, we've been able to do a net add to the reserves annually through a combination of excess toll revenues and a set aside for capital contribution and depreciation. For fiscal year 25-26, we estimate we'll be able to do that thanks to the last of SB 125, where we've been able to pay ourselves back for the shortfall for the previous fiscal year. However, in fiscal year 26-27, we anticipate having contributed to the reserves as we spend significant amounts and the operating expenses based on current assumptions on funding and expenses. The good news is the board has been diligent in increasing revenues through the 5-year toll plan and fare plans, as well as focusing on only providing transit service as much as the customer demand dictates. This has enabled the district to have a strong reserve position, and it is these decisions that are allowing us to do some of these large capital projects, now including the new vessel replacement and seismic retrofit, which is the bulk of these reserves, which is what the bulk of these reserves were designed for. That being said, I do need to point out that using district reserves to pay for operating shortfalls is not sustainable and not a long-term solution, as we've discussed over this last year. If we do not see downtown San Francisco pick up, we will need to see how we spend reserves is to look at page 24 and 25. On page 24, you can see the trend of the reserve balance over the last 25 years. It's rare to see reserves drop because we've been very deliberate in saving for these large capital projects. But as we've discussed with seismic retrofit being such a large project, we anticipate seeing that drop over the next couple of years. On page 25, we built this graph years ago that demonstrates basically we were trying to be very diligent in our funding. The red line anticipates if we start a project, we can pay for that project. So obviously, because the seismic retrofit is so large, you see that dip below zero right away because of what we have. The blue line is really the cash flow, and it demonstrates that it demonstrates that the cash flow perspective from the reserves. It doesn't contemplate our last discussion only adding to the reserves, so we also anticipate looking at ways to make sure that capital reserve stays steady as we go through and pay off. All right, page 26, we call the board restricted reserves. On there's one that's called the Bridge Self-Insurance Reserve. We call it the BS decision in fiscal year 05-06. That would have been the amount of insurance we would have paid to insure the bridge. And over the years, we've earmarked it. Instead of paying the insurance, which kept going up, we paid it into our own earmark of reserve. Happy to say that this year we hit 25 million. We plan to put another 1.3 so that we will have 26.3 million in case basically there's damage to the bridge. Revenues. That's what the section's for. All right. The next section shows the trends in bridge traffic, bus and ferry ridership, and their respective revenues. As an example, on page 27, the green line shows what the pre-pandemic traffic looked like, followed by COVID in red. There have been so many lines that we've taken out all the years in between last year and coming year. And as you can see, it's somewhere in between. And it shows that we have been steady over the past couple of years, but in compared to years past, we are not at pre-pandemic levels. And it pretty much shows throughout all the different graphs, both for ridership and revenues. And then we get to page 33, which is the traffic funding overview. Transit funding overview. The graph on page 33 demonstrates the lost toll revenue we would have generally used to fund transit because of the pandemic. The dot revenue would be if the pandemic had not happened. The red line is actually the actual revenue. So the space in between, we call it, is the lost revenue opportunity. While the lines are closer together now, the dotted line didn't take into account this last toll increase. So compared to pre-pandemic tolls per crossing. So if we were to put the current toll to the dotted line, you would see much higher. And if you look at, someone's going to ask, why was the amount higher last year than it is anticipated for next year? We've had a really good market valuation, and we're not predicting that. And so it was kind of a one-year blip, as I said. Last year was the anomaly versus this year because we had a good market year, 24, 25. All right, page 34, that shows the transit revenue and what we think also similarly would have trended if the pandemic had not happened. As you can see, there's a significant gap on both bus and ferry. Page 35. This is something we use quite a bit to explain. You can see next year that we expect to spend $47.8 million on bus and $26 million on ferry in just toll revenue, as that's actually all transit. To use another 34.5 in reserves to make transit whole, absent any new sources in funding. So I'll pause to take a look at that. All right. Page 37 is the commercial paper. As we get to the end of this section, it just talks about the history and status of the commercial paper, which remains a vehicle for short term, no longer than 270 days, for $61 million that was put in place in 2000. And then we get to a discussion on the long-term strategic plan. And that has the board, as you know, a strategic plan in May of 24. This item is included as Appendix F. The second few initiatives the staff intend on working and reviewing this year. And with that, that concludes the main highlights of this front section. We're going to do an overview of operating and capital, but before I do that, I want to take a pause and see if there are any questions, comments, discussion on this front section.
Director Beverly, please.
Thank you. I'm not on the committee, so I'll ask a question.
Please.
If you could just explain briefly the bridge self-insurance reserve gets that administered and
It's just set aside in our reserves. We don't administer, we don't, send it out anywhere. In the reserve structure, right? We have set asides, so we have the capital set aside. This is one we call out because, after 9/11, insurance on the bridges went up quite a bit, and the board made a decision rather than to keep paying these high insurance rates. We just took that money and set it aside and said that if there was damage to the bridge, that we would build up a fund so that any lost toll revenues could be covered over that.
it's all good. It's all good. So we manage that as well.
Yes.
Cool.
Thank you.
President Rabbit.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jennifer, for all the work and staff. Appreciate that. Hey, so in light of our wishes to have bonding authority, I'm curious about how the use of the reserves to the tune of 34 million plus the carryover of the SB
125.
Yeah, the 12.7 million, how that would impact a credit rating and the cost of that. And if you don't know that, I mean, assume it impacts somewhere.
Yeah.
Then I'm also curious about that. How many years in arrears do you have to have using less reserves going forward, trying to get to the question of projections versus actuals and what would be better for the district long term?
Yeah, I'll start with the credit rating. We are very diligent to talk to our credit rating agencies, and I've been working with them over this last year. Of course, they're looking at the reserves. They study kind of what our trends are. And the message that I have for this, quite frankly, the seismic retrofit is one of the largest projects we've done. However, we've set reserves aside for that. We also that keeps replenishing the reserves, as well as the depreciation that also goes into the reserve. So even though all this money's coming out, it doesn't necessarily net to zero this year. I'm going to have a little discussion with them. One of the things that we do talk to them about is that this board in particular, we have kept our credit rating because this board makes what we call, they make hard decisions. And they know that we will cut service or we will raise tolls. We will balance our budget in order to keep ourselves financially solvent. And that allows the credit rating to remain. This year, we'll see what they have to say on the capital side, right? We've set those reserves aside. We need to deal a little bit with our operating expenses and right sizing that. We have been talking to them about, we've been watching San Francisco, in the next couple of items, you'll see overall, and I always tell them the budget is extremely, I make sure it's conservative, right? The general manager and I have knocked down dragouts how conservative or less conservative we need to revenue side, quite frankly. I do not take some agencies will count in their violations for toll revenues. They will say they're going to make themselves 100% whole. We go through and make that on purpose, make sure that we're living within our means. In addition to, we have been very aggressive about making sure that capital contribution and the capital reserves stay at the level. We are going through an internal exercise now that I have told them. They say they don't like this, Jennifer, but I said, if we don't have the money and it's not absolutely necessary for some of these smaller capital projects, we're going to put those on hold. So I think what I say to the credit agencies is, we are doing all the right things to keep ourselves with the fiscal discipline. It's easy just to spend down the reserves. I mean, I say you guys have a lot of money in the bank. It's how you want to use it. We have set aside specifically. With that being said, I know that Dennis is looking for legislation for long-term bond authority. I don't take that lightly because it, takes money to make money. It also costs money to borrow money. So we're going to be looking at that balance. It is very delicate in that we really are kind of holding out and hoping that we're getting closer. I mean, I last year didn't think that downtown San Francisco would inch us up some more. We're about 85% where we are pre-COVID. I think last year I kept saying 75, 80. He keeps inching it up. Dennis keeps inching it up, 85, almost 90, comes back down to 85. So I am conservative in this budget to make sure that those revenues stay solvent. I'm also conservative on the expense side. So you heard me say we budget every position because if you don't have it, we shouldn't spend it, right? So each budget is at step 5 because you don't know where those vacancies are going to get filled. And we are putting in, it has a little bit for fuel. And this is something Grant and I have been going back and forth. I will say your auditor controller, I don't know how he did it. He was spot on fuel per gallon, the price per gallon. We would have days in the back, but Joe I don't know how he does it, but he could be like, don't worry about it, or no, we need to increase it. So I was, we're not sure because of the gas prices now, but we did them as of March. They're kind of in between. We hope they come back down. So with all of that, I'd say, again, a budget is on paper. It's the authority you give us to spend. It also allows us a little flexibility, quite frankly, to be able to maybe if we need to deal with customer demand on one end, but the general manager's also been very consistent about some of the positions that have been frozen over the years, just to make sure we keep our expenses at bay.
I'll add one thing. One of the things that affects our rating is that we're a single toll plaza. So other agencies have multiple toll plazas. So we're subject to potential issues because we have only one. An economic shock, affects just this one. And so because of all the hard work that Jennifer and her team does and all the policy decisions you make, we do have maintained for many years the highest rating of any single toll facility in the country. And so with that having been said, when our numbers look a little different they're very focused on them because we have only one toll facility. So, Jennifer and her team will have a lot of hard work next year to talk to the rating agencies. But the fact that this board has that history of making those tough decisions to, raise fares or reduce service is what allows us to do that, and we'll remind them of that.
Can I ask a question?
Snyder, and then I think President Rudd has.
I would just like to say thank you to both of you for that. And I just think it's important that we keep our eye on that. Obviously, it's a unique situation that we're in. And we just don't want to make a decision that would come back and bite us. I just got a text earlier about a bond issuance from our water agency, and they think it was successful, but 3.83%. There were 9 responders. Present value is 1.31 or 210,000. I think $300 million issuance.
Yep.
So those. It's something that we're not used to having in our books.
Absolutely.
So we'll definitely have to take that into account. And I'm kind of curious about the lag in time, or the how far back in arrears they would go to look, and making sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Snyder.
Yeah, I had a question on page 25. You speak to the Amalgamated Transit Union and how you guys calculate the pension liability. And do I read it right that it's not calculated as, how does that work?
I guess, you're talking about the top of page 25 when it talks about GASB 668?
Yeah.
What's we put in here, because we don't manage the trust, and we don't do the earnings, and it's independent, but it is required as an entity for us to report out. We take what their calculation is, and it comes in. It won't show in the budget. It shows actually in the ACFR, as we call it, in the financials.
I guess the second piece to that, is there anything in the budget that addresses the pension shortfall that we're working on currently?
No, we don't include things for future negotiations. So we have a collective bargaining agreement with all the coalition agencies. So all those costs are in here. We only put costs in here, not just labor costs, but any costs when there's a decision. So we'll adopt the budget, and then if after that the board adopts something that has wage increases or pension contributions, when that comes before the board, it would include the requisite budget action.
Because my understanding is we're going to fix it this year.
We are focused on fixing it this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we continue? Please resume.
All right. Okay. I'm going to now turn to the operating budget summary that starts on page 48. And we'll go a little bit more in depth on the operating and capital budget itself. So some of it's repetitive, but we'll do a little deeper dive. So again, our operating budget's $299.5 million. It reflects the current service levels, including the mascots implementation, with a very modest room for growth. It also represents the cost of living increase for coalition, non-represented painters, and ATU administrative employees at 4%, and the ATU bus operators only until September 1, 2026, when their current contract ends. On page 48, you'll see how the $299.5 million will be funded. 59% of that is tolls, 8% are fares, 8% are operating grants, and 15% is SB 125 and the $34.4 million in reserves. The bridge division expenses make up 41% of the budget, followed by bus at 38 and ferry at 21. The question that often gets asked is that you'll see in here, we have a whole write-up about the district division, which is the administrative units. That actually, because it's a cost of the business unit, when you do bridge, bus, and ferry, it gets proportioned out. So in the budget part, if you're looking at the bridge division, it includes a portion of the district division and bus and ferry as well, but we also break out the district division and what those costs are. Just clarification. So page 49, the bar charts show how the funding streams are broken up. An important takeaway is, as we talked in the previous section, we'll pay ourselves back for that $7.8 million from the reserves from last year, and that'll leave approximately $12.7 million in SB 125 funds for on pages 50 and 51. There's a more in-depth look about revenues and the look at the investment income prediction. Page 53 has the state operating income. And two things I wanted to say about this. You'll see again, SB 125 is being exhausted, and the decrease from mascots on the Sonoma County share of 2.9 million from the mascots formula adjustments also there. So you will see the drop for the proposed budget 26-27 in those two areas. Page 54 is an overview of the operating expenses. If this is your first year going through this, our biggest expense, as you know, is our staff. That makes up about 70% of the budget for both salaries and benefits. On page 56, you can see the differences between the fiscal 25-26, where we think that's going to end, versus 26-27. And you can see the biggest change is really the cost of living increases, a little room for service growth, depreciation, and ensuring that all positions are budgeted. 62, these are all data points you can read on your time, or I'm happy to go over them, but they include the cost for average cost of toll transactions, cost per patron, our other post-employment benefits, as we call OPEB, healthcare premiums, workers' compensation, indirect cost allocation plan, and how the capital contribution expenses are spread, and pension contribution rates by bargaining unit to finish off that section on page 62. I can pause if there's anybody wants me to review any of those, but we, over the years, Joe and I have said somebody wanted them in one place, so a lot of the information is good because it's all attached to the budget and how things get calculated. All right, that brings me to page 63, and this is the proposed budget position changes for fiscal year 26-27. This year, the proposals to eliminate positions that have not been filled over a number of years and have been frozen for a while. The proposal this year is to eliminate 96 positions in the bus division, 90 which are bus operators, and 6 which are bus maintenance positions, and 9 positions in the district division. For the most part, these positions, the position changes are, this position, as a reminder, the bus operators are budgeted based on service levels and not position based. So we actually have not seen anywhere close to these number of positions. It's been done on a service level. And I believe, and Dennis probably knows better than I don't believe we've ever gone over 185 that I can remember. So
since the pandemic. So we employ 100 fewer bus drivers today than we did before the pandemic. There's not demand for that customer service. We used to run 25 buses every morning out of Mill Valley to the financial district. Today we run 7. And that's probably more than we should be running. So we've been carrying these positions on the budget. It's time to, I think, acknowledge that these vacant positions should not be carried forward in the budget because it creates false expectations. And so we have a budget that will allow us to add bus service, has room for growth, but it acknowledges that post-pandemic, we don't have the same number of need for employees that we did beforehand because customers are not going to San Francisco. They're not just not driving in, they're not riding the bus and boat in during the commute period. And so we offer less service. We did not lay anyone off. That was all managed through attrition. But those positions have been vacant for almost 6 years now. And so to carry them on paper on the budget is, we think, misleading. And it generates lots of questions that are best answered by just being honest about where we are today. Our district is a lot smaller today than it was before the pandemic. And as Jennifer mentioned earlier, even though we're a lot smaller, this budget contemplates spending more money than we have coming in, contemplated next year. And so it seems prudent that if we have a deficit budget, that we remove vacant positions that we know we have no glimmer of hope of filling within the next year. If something miraculously happens and we have people coming back, we'll come to the board and ask you to add these positions back.
thank you. Also, in addition, there are 3 positions that are being requested for reclassification that also meet the current business need and create efficiencies for the district. And then I am going to pause here again before I do a quick discussion on the capital budget. Any questions on the operating?
Directors, questions? Please, Director Cochran.
On your expenses, I see where the gas prices are almost double. Have you taken into account the the doubling of that for our fuel?
We didn't take in, because we did this in February before the war started and things were increasing. So I believe we have some fat in there. I would say Grant has been diligently trying to figure out how much more. It's not like we're not going to spend fuel, but I would say that, our expenses could get offset if the gas prices continue to stay double.
But we'll account for it.
Yeah, we'll account for it.
Other questions? Okay, please continue.
All right, so we are at the capital program summary, page 66. As we discussed, we updated the 10-year capital plan to ensure priorities, resources, and funding in the near future. This section is the one-year capital budget proposed for fiscal year 26-27. It is almost $240.6 million, funded by $72.8 million in district funds and $167.8 million in grants. There are currently 69 projects. 11 are new projects, 54 are continuing, and 4 capital equipment projects. For expecting 11 of these 11 projects to be completed. And as a breakout, these projects, 64% are bridge, 3% are bus, 31% are ferry, and 2% come out of the district division. For a detailed look at these projects, you can look at pages 71 to 74. Of course, seismic is making up $120 million, and the new ferry boats combined and for $52.6 million of the $240.6 million proposed. As part of the budget approval, we're asking for 2 current budget projects to have increases. The total budget increases equal $4.5 million, with the bulk of that ask for the gangways and piers Sausalito construction project. The increase is being requested to accommodate the updated estimate and the cost per construction. The second is just finishing off the Kronos project and replacing some old time clocks that need to be replaced as we finish out that project. Lastly, on page 75, we talk about the request to authorize through the budget process this project list. So this is we call the capital budget project list. Sources and needs allowed. This gives us the authority to bring it off of the list per se and put it into the capital budget itself. We didn't want to, over the years, we don't like overloading a one-year budget that, we're not sure they're going to get to. So this is our way of kind of have an intermediate transition step. Let's see, and the fiscal year 26-27, during the budget process, we focus on the ongoing projects and make sure those projects are complete. So that's why we've also limited the number of new projects. And between the discussion between the divisions, the auditor controller, myself, the district engineer, and the general manager, we ensure that the resources, that's a reasonable work plan that's created before you. And with that, this ends the first 2 sections of the book. The next sections I leave, or I'm happy to keep going on every operating division and to review at your own leisure. All managers and officers have status reports in there, an explanation about their division in each of the budgets. In the adopted budget, we are able to get year-end data, and we put performance measure. The budget comes out in August. We would love you to kind of look at those performance reviews and get acquainted with those. But for now, next steps, I can open up to questions. But before that, next steps, if you have an opportunity or you have any questions, feel free. You can reach out to me directly. If you want something in a follow-up presentation for next month, I'm happy to do that. As a reminder, this item will come back before you next month for approval of all the recommendations that you have in the actual board item and that you have traditionally requested as part of the budget process. So with that, thank you for sitting through this long presentation. Happy to open up for any more questions or discussion.
Do we have more questions, Director? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry, Director Hernandez. Apologies.
I apologize, Mr. President. My hand was delayed. Good. First, I should say congratulations to you, Mr. Chair. You really jumped into this one, into the deep end. Yeah.
Yep.
No patty cake here. Okay, so but I also want to say thank you very much to Jennifer and her staff, Grant, Chris, everyone that worked with you. This is an amazing document. It always impresses me. It always makes my eyes cross because there's so much detail and it's so much of it is at a level that I have to really work hard to try to understand. Also want to say thank you so much to questions, large or small, complex or simple. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Also want to say thank you to Director Terrio. This document is a reflection, and a budget document in general is a reflection of the values of the organization. And so not only are there, projections and declarations and all of these details and information and numbers that we're looking at here, but we're also looking at how the district treats, our almost 900 employees, how we plan for them for the future. It thinks and talks about and comes from a place where we have to consider the public that we serve, not just folks that are walking over the bridge and taking a picture that they'll cherish for their life, but folks that have to drive to work every day, folks that have to get on our bus system, folks that are passengers on our ferry. So it's a very, very complex document. It's I used to be when I became a director and saw one of these for the first time, I really didn't know what to make of it. But over the years, I've learned the consequence of this document, the value of this document, and the amount of effort document together for the interest of the whole and the people that we serve. So I just want to say big thank yous. So many complex issues have come up recently for you that, in addition, you've had to 125 is going away. Oh my gosh, what do we do? But you also, I also want to say, extend appreciation for the confidence that you give me, and I think the rest of the board members, on managing things appropriately with a level of expertise that it is obvious, and that is just so appreciated. So thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please.
I just would like to follow up on Sabrina's passion and comments. And I know Chris would want me to make note of the fact that in the front is the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. And I know you worked so hard for that. You probably mentioned it earlier, but it's significant.
Thank you. Yeah, we're celebrating our 20 years of the award. So next year we'll be 21 and allowed to drink. We also try to mix it up, and we always do this on purpose. Pictures are always a big thing. So we have one of the most beautiful icons to take different pictures, but we also try to mix it up and see what flavors we can have. So we hope you enjoy some of that. I know Chris worked hard to always try to find something new. Thank you again for your time. And again, please reach out if you have any questions. Feel free, email, give me a call before the next meeting if there's something I can answer for you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for the presentation. I'll note that during my professional career over the years, I've been brought in to steer the ship around, as it were. Ships, even the smallest business, does not turn around on a dime. And you've done a great job of acknowledging structural deficit that we do have, and the acknowledgement that cannot be solved with one-time money. So that's very important to note. And you kept us laser focused so that we don't get distracted by the next shiny thing, right? We have to stay, over the next couple of years, we have to stay laser focused on this. And there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of political issues there as well. But it also not only is a living, breathing document, but it has a heart. And that heart is reflected in how we are taking care of our staff. And I think that's really important as we go along, not being so cut and dry, and understanding that we need to get to there. But how do we get to there?
Yep.
With as gentle of a landing as possible can. So I have complete confidence, and I'm very, very grateful for all of your hard work and the staff's hard work, general manager's hard work, and I'm heartened by the discipline of this board as we move forward. So thank you very much. Any additional comments, colleagues? Okay, that concludes the discussion on this item. Is there anyone from the public who would like to chime in?
Since this item went on a little longer and there's a lot of people that jumped on and off, I'm going to ask Justine to pull the public line just in case there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this item. Justine, could you please pull your public comment line one more time?
Certainly. Is there anyone that's joined us that would like to speak on this item this morning? Please press ** to unmute yourself and give me your name. Again, if you'd like to speak on this item, please press star to unmute yourself and give me your name. I am not hearing anyone this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no speakers on this item.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. This was staff's initial presentation of the budget, and of course, no action is required. I encourage my colleagues to review the budget book and reach out to staff, as Jennifer mentioned, with any additional questions. The budget will be before us again next month for adoption on this item 8 on the agenda, which is the status report of the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. The staff report begins on page 59, and you get to remain in that chair.
All right. I'll finish it up for you. We've talked a lot of finance today, but staff report on the 25-26 budget, so our current. As always, I look at attachment A or page 61 of your packet that kind of the end of April, how we're looking, and we're looking great with the, as you know, with the SB 125 funds. We are looking at about 14.5 million right now being able to carry over. We'll see, we are in our high spending months, so there's a lot of bills coming due on the operating side. So expect that again. And we're estimating conservatively that we'll be able to carry over about 13 million for next fiscal year. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Questions?
There are any.
Questions from directors? Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
All right.
This concludes our discussion on the item. Is anyone from public wishing to speak on agenda item number 8?
We have no speakers on this item.
Okay, thank you. There's no action associated with item number 8. We will move to item number 9, which is the monthly review of the Golden Gate Bridge traffic, tolls, and bus and ferry, transit patronage fares, as well as item 10, monthly statement of review and expenses, and 10B, the monthly statement of capital programs and expenditures. Please resume reporting.
Last month, you kind of had a quarterly report, so I won't say much, but if you turn to page 71 of your packet or the second page of the item 9, which is what I always use as a chart to show the monthlies of both ridership and traffic, as well as the revenues associated. You did notice that April was lower than March. It was lower than the months before. And then our analysts get out there and they do all these calculations and figure out why it looks that way. And Rick DiTullio from my staff would look at me and go, how many days of rain? So we actually chalk up, aside from the fact that April has 30 days, but it was lower than last April was a very sunny month apparently. And this April we got some unexpected rain. And you can see how elastic we are with that. I will note again, we are still working on the bus ridership numbers. They are trending within themselves, but we'll be coming back at we think we have finally with Clipper 2.0 able to right size that ridership number. So we will be doing that at the end of the year and cleaning those up, just as a note to yours. And ferry keeps trending upward, and we are looking where we think we'd like to be. Again, I'm always conservative, so you can see on the budget versus how we are doing. So I'm always happy to say that the actuals are outdoing the budget, and this is what I want to see for ridership and revenue. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Thank you. Directors, questions on 9, 10A, or 10B? Okay, seeing none, this concludes the discussion on the item. Is there anyone public wishing to speak on these items?
We have no speakers for those 3 items.
Okay, thank you. No actions are required. Before we continue on to item 11 on the agenda, which is closed session, if there are no objections here, I'd like to accommodate the public and take item 12, public comment now instead of after the closed session. Are there any objections? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Thank you. We already pulled the public for any other public comment, and Justine's already informed me that there's no other speakers. If we are in closed session and someone speaks up, I'll let you know.
Perfect. Thank you. We're placing public on hold for the duration of our closed session and return after closed session to adjourn the meeting. Attorney Dana Louie, please take us into closed session.
Thank you. The committee will now move into closed session, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. Report of Hanson Bridget on Gary Dawkins versus Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District and Lynn McKinney versus Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, San Francisco County Superior Court, case number CGC-25-623257.
you for your patience while we're in closed session. If I can please remind you to please keep your own devices on mute. Thanks so much. Thank you for your patience while we remain in closed session, everybody.
All right, we're back in open session.
Okay, thank you. We are back into open session, and Attorney Dana Louie, what is your report on?
During closed session, the committee gave direction to legal counsel on the matters listed on the agenda.
Thank you for that report out. We've reached the end of the agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, we have first and second. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.